Okay, I feel that teachers expect their students to be on time, be prepared, be willing to learn. As a student's job, I feel like that's a student's job, to show up, be present, and be willing to put the work in.
I feel a lot of times like teachers expect you to treat their class as if it's the only thing you have to do in your entire life. Not every teacher, of course, but I do get that a lot where it's, you know, if you overlook some little thing, they tend to get kind of offended as if, you know, but when you're doing like 10 other things and you're working and you're taking like 3 other classes, it's just not always realistic. So I guess they expect a lot would be the answer. I think the content is what's most important as well. I mean, of course, that's more applied to like writing. I mean, a math question is either wrong or it's right. But at the same time, even in math, if you make an effort, if you get through the first 3 steps of the formula and mess up the other 2, that should count for something. I mean, the fact that you tried and that you made an effort and whether your name was on the right or the left side is, you know, I think they should be a little more concerned with the content.
I think my teacher expects me to really immerse myself in the material that he's trying to teach. That's basically what I think he teaches.
Well, I think first of all they expect us to be on time and attend every class and be a good listeners. And what they should expect any weird question, because students ask so many questions and they should be ready to answer them all.
I expect from my teacher to have the openness to connect with their students, because sometimes I've had an experience where I've been in a classroom and the teacher's like kind of talking at the students and no one's really understanding. No one's really getting it. It's not that like, they don't have that passion to help someone actually learn. They're just like feeding you, throwing you stuff. And it's kind of up to you. So, well, that as a student, that is your job to, it's your job to, you know, obtain it, but there's no like extra, like, do you need any help or, you know, any type of, I'm paying all this money, I want some more, I want you to really like want, you know, like work with me sometimes.
To be concise when they ask, like in instructions, like the people we were just dealing with, I mean, it's sort of an offhand example, but they're trying to look at their teacher's instructions, they don't know what they want, and that's really frustrating when, you know, you're trying to get an A and you're trying to do your best, and it's, I think you got to keep it simple. If they put too many explanations in the instructions of why they're writing the instructions that way, it's just going to throw people off. Just a very basic, okay, do this, do that, do this, step 1 through 10 or whatever they want, as concise as possible.
That's a good question. Okay, first of all, English is my second language. I expect from them they understand me and be a patient with me because I want to successful. And some teacher may be frustrated with people with different culture. So that's what I want from them. Like, I hope so they can understand people with different language. You know what English is, of course.
To really, I guess, really challenge the students, not make it easy.
We should know how can we use the knowledge we have, the knowledge we get from them.
It's to teach us things, to do it in a timely manner, to explain why we got the grades that we got, or go over what we got wrong, or things like that.
To know our names, not just be a student ID number.
Okay.
Make it more personal, acting like they care.
I think something that's important is for the teachers to provide a safe learning environment. Like no putting down if somebody asks a question that might not seem, I guess, to their level or that they think is not irrelevant. But a more safe learning environment to not put down the students so that we don't feel intimidated to ask questions and that we don't feel like we're going to get bullied into class.
I expect teachers to, when they require materials like textbooks, to actually use the textbooks and not just use it for like a paragraph for like the entire semester, and they're so expensive.
Sometimes you have teachers that are not very punctual, and it cuts into your class time, which is your learning time, and I mean, we're paying for the classes as well, so we should be able to get as much out of it as we can.
Come across some teachers that are not prepared, so they don't have any of their materials ready. It would be nice for them to have their materials ready and set an example of what they're expecting from the student, because it's easy to pinpoint, this is what I want, this is what I expect from you. It needs to come first from the teacher. Set the example, set the standards of what the student needs to be ready, be prepared for, and how to come to class, ready and prepared. If the teacher's not ready and prepared, how do you expect the student to be ready and prepared to perform when you're not being set the example? So it comes from the leader that's going to be leading the rest of the students. So.
I do, yeah. Some are definitely harder than others, though. And a big part of it is kind of figuring out the ins and outs of the teacher and how they do things. Once you get that down, you can be successful, but there is like a period of feeling the teacher out. Okay, how big are they going to be about this, or how cool are they going to be about that? What do they prefer in even a writing style? Some teachers you can think it's the most brilliant thing you've ever written, and they just see it completely differently. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can. I think I can because I'm study hard. I try my best.
I think that no, I can't because there are some subjects. It's not because I'm physically unable to. It's because again, sometimes when you're not being challenged or you're not being stimulated, you just sit there and you kind of let things just happen.
My ideal teacher would be someone who's passionate about what they're teaching, what information, and actually know the information, and are passionate about what they're teaching.
Is concise about what they want, but also answers questions without acting like they're dumb or it's interrupting them. I mean, there is a certain degree where you raise your hand too many times, and yeah, you're interrupting the whole class. But I think if a teacher can kind of work on the fly and maybe even tailor their lecture to what's been asked or what people want to know, as opposed to just being really rigid about their lesson plan and interacting with the students as more of a conversation in a way. I don't know if that's the perfect teacher, but that's what I like in a teacher.
The ideal teacher is, again, a teacher that challenges their students, finds the things that they're most afraid to learn and teaches it to them. Obviously, a teacher can't do everything, but just presents the things that they are afraid of so that they can grow in them.
My ideal would be very knowledgeable, very friendly, and willing to help.
If she comes with the enthusiasm to want to teach, to want to show the students what they need to learn, with the personality of I'm going to be here, with the true honesty, not saying I'm going to help you out, and then later on in the semester she starts getting uptight or a little upset with stuff. I mean, of course everybody has those times and those days, but you got to have that in you to overcome that personality and overlook things, just to say, you know what, I'm going to help you out to the fullest. I'm going to answer your question without any sarcasm. I'm going to let you know what you need to know, when you need to know it, how you need to know it, with a great personality.
Yes. One of my biggest fears is that, not to say that I am, but sometimes I question if I'm spending all this money and I'll be able to get a job.
I think everybody does. Of course, due dates and getting things done. Again, it goes back to that pleasing thing. If they have too many weird little rules and they're too specific about things, that can really freak you out because you're thinking, wow, I wrote this great essay, but I put my name on the wrong side, so I might get a B when I know I deserve an A. That definitely makes me anxiety. And then not being able, I mean, I know there's a limit on absences, but people get sick. And teachers have to be able to respond an email and maybe at least try to give you the same credit that you're still making an effort even though you couldn't be there at that particular moment. I mean, of course, if you're always absent, you never do anything, that's different, but...
Actually, yes. Especially the day before the test. Especially. Yeah, and sometimes when we were in a group, because I don't know if I give the wrong answer to my group, or maybe they give me the wrong answer and the whole group fell up. a need for that. So that's it.
I think the biggest anxiety that I've experienced has been asking questions. I guess it's mostly the environment that the teacher, maybe inadvertently, sometimes on purpose, sets up. Sometimes there's a fear that he or she might create, sometimes without knowing, in asking questions. Maybe they're afraid of being ostracized for asking a dumb question or something like that. That's usually the biggest anxiety, though. And grades do suffer because of it. You're afraid to ask a question, and you fall further and further behind.
The highest level of anxiety was in the first semester. After 10 years of being at home, I went back to school, so that was the first thing I had to encounter.
I think that there's always a level of anxiety when you start a new class, only because you're always worried as to who the teacher's going to be and how they're going to present themselves. It's really after the first day that you know whether or not that class is going to go good for you or not. And it really does depend on how the instructor presents themselves the first day with their personality and the way they kind of describe the class to you. Some of them try to intimidate and scare you, and others are like, yeah, it's hard, but you're going to get through it. So that first day is probably the most anxious of them all, because that's when you realize what you're getting yourself into.
But as a professor, I feel like the professor should, have be willing to sometimes have meet the student outside of class. A lot of professors do have office hours and online. They're constantly being able, you can email them whenever you need, and they'll get back to you within a couple of hours. And yeah, it's pretty much guidelines. The syllabus is always important. It frustrates me when teachers give me a syllabus and then they don't follow it.
Well, I mean, that's another job, right? I mean, they should definitely be knowledgeable on the subject itself. And then, as long as they're clear about what they want from you, when you turn in the assignment, I mean, that's good enough.
I think enough to really present the material, to present the challenges, but, obviously the teacher can't do everything. But I guess just enough to present the challenges.
The question is that it has to be enough to go on, but not too much. Because when the guidance is too much, you never learn. You have to do yourself, but some guidance should be there.
None that personally affect me, but I know there are stereotypes. As women, you're supposed to go to school. And there's a stereotype for men, especially minority men, but they're not going to go to school. They're just supposed to be an athlete or some sort. So when they actually do go to school, it's kind of a surprise. And as far as I have Asian friends, and I know their parents put a lot of pressure on them to be in school and to be get straight A's, and they're they're human too. That that's just a stereotype. I really have to try just as hard as anyone else. I'm not gonna just get it.
Socioeconomic, I think, is an issue because some teachers will be like, oh yeah, because this is just an example that I dealt with. Go to this museum and you'll get extra credit. Well, I need gas to get there, and the ticket to the museum is $12. And then if I want to have lunch while I'm there, I mean, that's a $50, $60 trip. So I'm paying for that extra credit in some sense. As much as I love to go to the museum, I think teachers, when they give assignments or whatever it is, extra credit, have to think about, it shouldn't cost me a ton of money to do this. I know.
From what I've experienced, no, or not this far at least. And I'm actually pretty proud to say that. So.
Not here. I haven't met any stereotypes here. The only thing when you're an ESL student, the language is a very, very hard barrier to go on. And the only thing I met here was the language barrier. That's all.
I think always there's some sort of stereotype. There can be, going to Mission College, it's a majority of Hispanic Latinos. So sometimes there might be a white person in the class and you see that they participate more and everyone's maybe not everyone. There's always going to be a few people who just in their heads oh, there's that white guy who think it's always partially like that. Or you can be in a class full of guys and you're the only girl, and it could make you a little nervous, a little uncomfortable that they might do better than you.